It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Tuesday, August 1st, and so happy for you joining us, and we are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. Today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have Provi in the media, the practical word study, and of course, commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone, how are you doing? Yes, Monday is officially over, and now we're into the meat of the week. I hope you guys enjoyed your Monday, and now let's get some things going, putting the words into action this week. If you haven't yet, go ahead, leave a like and comment to build our community. Really happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive, so let's get up and support each other each and every day. This week's Sunday message title is Learn Only From Me. Man, it's been a solid week for me so far, especially because a lot of things that I did, especially, I lectured for the first time in years, right? It's been a long time, and really nerve-wracking. I was wondering if I would remember any Bible verses. I was prepping to teach history, but of course, in the beginning, I just wanted to make sure that this newcomer, because, history is after times, and half a times, and in most cases, people don't learn history lesson, right? It's just not taught very much because it was a lesson that Sunseam usually taught after times, and half a times for the passing ceremony. So that is something that I think that everyone should be learning eventually, because it is a powerful message. Like, it kind of makes times, half a times all like fit together even more, right? So I was really nervous, but it was good because this newcomer, I asked him if he had any questions, because he just learned times and half the times the day before, right? And there were some super important questions that he wanted to figure out first. So I spent like a good hour and a half just teaching him, just answering his questions first. And, times, half the times is such a heavy lesson. There is so much to digest. And I'm sure people have thoughts like, oh, what about this? What about that? And most of the questions, that this newcomer was giving was from times, half times, and the Holy Sun lesson. So I was glad to get those questions out of the way first before going forward. So I didn't actually end up teaching the history lesson. I spent a good hour and a half just answering his questions first, and then I'll teach him again this week, the first part of the history lesson. But, I think it's important to, I think it's really important, especially in the later advanced stages, to make sure there is nothing holding these people back from learning more deeply or getting into the final parts of the lessons, and also making sure they realize really deeply too before, they just learned times, half the times. I'm always wondering, like, did they realize or not? But it was really, for me, it was really great to feel the fire in my heart when I was preaching, when I was lecturing. Like, I've missed that feeling. I super enjoyed it. And I have the audio, so I'm gonna get permission, and then I'm gonna post that audio onto Patreon. So if you want to hear the questions that this person gave, like, he gave good questions like, how do I treat Sunseam, kind of thing, right? And for me, it's like a very open question, because it just depends. Like, when someone says that, you might assume that he realized, but you're not really sure. So he asked questions like that. So I thought it was a very, very healthy time of Q&A. I will post that onto I will post it onto onto Patreon, so you guys can listen to it on there too. All right. Barbie is like moving strong. I think they had like another $100 million week, right? Like, it's crazy popular. And then I talked to, from Provipuff Girls, there's Rachel. She's like she's a new person that came in second gen over there in Texas. And I was talking to her about Barbie, because I was like, I'm not really into watching it. Like, I really don't want to watch it, kind of thing, right? And, she was like going, what? You guys got to catch up. I've already seen it twice. And I was like, whoa, right? So I was like, yeah, maybe then we can have a man cave where we're watching Barbie, right? Because, I think only one person might have seen it out of like the 8 people inside the man cave room. And this, Rachel's already seen it twice. But then she gave the most interesting comment after she said, I saw it twice. And she said she just needed a reason to go out and dress up. All right. And then she sent me pictures of her taking pictures at the Barbie. There's the Barbie setup where you take pictures with all the other people and stuff like that. And it's just all these, her and her friends from church all glammed up to watch Barbie. Everyone's in pink. And, you kind of realize at that point, just even for me, at that point, I'm realizing this is why guys and girls are so different. Guys are not looking for a reason to glam up. Right? We're not looking for a reason to get dressed and go out, which means the second time she went to watch the movie wasn't even for the movie. It was to dress up, right? And for me, coming from a guy's perspective, I was so at odds. I'm like, what? You need a reason to dress up? Why don't you just go dress up and go out anyways? But, I do think it's something that guys and girls need to understand each other better about, right? I'm going to be honest with you. I think a guy would rather get dirty. And that sounds kind of weird, right? I think we'd rather get dirty, go sweat playing sports, getting dirty exercising, going to war, shooting people, blood on their clothes, scratches on my face, this is something that I think that guys, we take pride more in those things than, look at me guys, I look so hot right now. I am so hot. Yeah, did you see? I got my hair cut just for today so I can watch Barbie, and I bought a whole new outfit. It's all pink, even my underwear. Guys are not like that. We're totally not like that, right? But, I just think we're different. Yeah, and it's not something it's funny because we are so different, but I'm not saying all, but generally speaking. Generally speaking, I would rather watch John Wick 4 3 times than watch Barbie once. I would rather watch Mission Impossible or Top Gun Maverick than even considering Barbie, right? I'd rather watch Dune. I'd rather watch Oppenheimer, right? And it's for me, Oppenheimer is it's a movie about power and the decisions we make that affect the rest of the world. This is kind of a guy thought. Someone was once even asking me well, guys have been on top for so long and this, and this. And I'm like, is that really because guys, are suppressing the woman, or is it just because of behavior? Right? Just because of behavior of male and females. And someone might say to me, oh, you're just trying to make an excuse kind of thing. And excuse that, guys have not been pushing women down. And honestly, yes, there have been things where, where the voting and rights and these types of things, yes, I do agree with that. However, I do think a lot of it has to do with the behavior and differences between men and women. So let me give you a crazy example of one of the largest studies done by Harvard. The differences between men and women have been done just recently. Okay? And what they found out is that men get paid more than women as Uber drivers. And you're like, what? How does that make any sense? And the crazy part is, Uber is not a human being paying people. It is automated. So why is it that men make more than women on Uber? And it's become one of the most comprehensive studies about women and men's behavior. And on top of it, there is so much data out there because of the hundreds of thousands of drivers in multiple countries. So guess what the 3 major reasons are because why guys get paid more than girls on Uber. And remember, they all get paid the same amount, but why are guys making more than girls? Okay? And there's 3 reasons. The first reason is time. And you're like, what do you mean by time? Time means, or timing. Guys are more willing to work the graveyard shift, which makes you more money, and work the early morning shift, which makes you more money. Right? So you kind of see that it's a little bit more ambitious. So guys are more willing to take the times that are really bad times of the day, yet they're willing to do it to make more money. Right? So there's the first reason. So it has nothing to do with, oh, the guys are suppressing the girls. What's the second reason? The second reason is guys will stick to Uber, or they'll stick to the platform longer than women. So women quit earlier. right? So men stay on it longer, they gain more experience from it, they learn how to make more money, with the times and everything else. They learn the tricks of the trade much better because they have way more experience, which is normal and natural. The longer you do something, the better you get at it, right? But the third one was kind of funny. The third reason why guys make more money than girls is because they drive faster. Yeah, this is all studies. All this is data collected from all the thousands and thousands of Uber drivers around the world. It has nothing to do with the actual money itself of one getting paid more than the other. It's about behavior, right? And I would say why are there more men in government is probably because guys have more wanting to be in power. I don't think girls are really concerned about power, right? And there's just different things that guys and girls would do to get to that point, right? So I do think that's another great discussion for Man Cave and Provipuff. But yeah, I suggest everyone to look into that Harvard study on the behavioral differences of men and women, and Uber, which is an automated platform where everyone's getting paid the exact same amount, everyone has the same opportunity, but men are still making more than women for those three reasons. And I think that's something that's very, very interesting that we should that should be discussed also. So if you guys, Man Cave, Provipuff, that is a great question. I do think maybe we're gonna have like combined Man Cave, Provipuff, right? So that people can see the girls and guys talking with each other too, and just see how different the thoughts really are. So I'm really, really excited about that one too. But I found that to be a very, very amazing study done. Also, so remember yesterday I was talking about leadership in Providence and how I was talking about the Q&A I had over the weekend. And during that Q&A, I was talking to leaders of the church over here, and we're just discussing about leadership, management, evangelism, all these other different things. And I thought it was a very, very good conversation and a lot of things that we can digest and learn, right? And another big topic that we talked about that I think that's very important for all of us to understand here is the relationship between leadership and Sunstream, and how much that really, really matters. Like, the relationship between the leadership and Sunstream is a huge thing. And the reason why I brought it up again, I'm bringing this up, is because it came out in the Saturday video of Sunstream's. Sunstream gave it was Sunstream's video message on Saturday, like an old message. But what he said was, it's how important it was for leadership to clearly to report in detail and clearly to him. And he said, I can only help as much as you report. And that's a very, very interesting thing that we have to think about is, if Sunstream can help us according to how much we report, it has to change the way that we think about the way Sunstream makes his decisions, right? Because there's like, think about this. Have there been times where Sunstream's appointed a leader and we're all like, wow, Sunstream appointed, this is the will of God, and then like less than a year later, the person's gone. You're like, whoa. And you could think about that and say, well, isn't that a mistake then? Isn't that supposed to be the will of God, but then now is that a mistake? And, I was sharing about this, and this is something I've shared probably for the first time to leadership in church, and I thought it was something that was beneficial to all of us here on the platform, on MSD too, right? Because, like I said, it was the first time I was really able to organize my thoughts and vocalize what was important, what I need, and the things that I realized and learned while being a leader. And one of the things I do think is a misconception that people have is how Sunstream appoints leaders, right? I thought it was very, very interesting because, when we get a letter from Sunstream, the first thing we do is we look at that letter and we hold it up as like authoritative law. It is the law, right? What Sunstream says, it goes. Like, this is what he said, so this is the will, and we have to follow it no matter what. There is no mistakes in this appointment of leadership. But then, like I said, even months or even days down the line, sometimes people are just replaced right away, which kind of destroys our thinking of, oh, this is the law, because how could this law just be changed this quickly? Right? Like, usually leaders are there for 3 years, but then what happens if they're replaced before 3 years? What if they're replaced in months or something like that? So, it could come to our minds that is the appointment wrong? Right? Is Sunstream wrong? But we all know that this has to do with predestination, the relative and absolute. Meaning, the relative predestination is referring to the human responsibility on the part of the leaders, human responsibility. Human responsibility for that leader to do their best, for that leader to not make mistakes, for that leader to be centered on God while they've been given the mission. Why? Because even if the will is with you, if you don't do your human responsibility, it can turn the will away, just like when it came to Jesus going to the cross. However, my point that I made on the weekend to the leaders, I said, my point is that the human responsibility comes well before the appointment. Well, when does the human responsibility start? It comes from the report the leadership gives to Sunsteam for a recommendation for a leader, right? You guys got to understand is like Sunsteam is not just sitting there praying and then he just starts thinking to himself, let me think about this church. And then when he starts praying for that church, all of a sudden a face comes into his mind. And he's like, oh, this person is the, it doesn't happen that way, that he appoints people that way. There's going to be recommendations from the leadership there, people that are, their boots are on the ground in that church so Sunsteam can know exactly what is happening there so that he can make an appointment that is fitting of the report that he gets. And now when you think about this makes the role of leadership have an even bigger, it's an even bigger role. There is a huge responsibility here on behalf of the leadership because they are the ones reporting to Sunsteam about the people who should go into leadership, which means what they report is important, right? How detailed, how clear, how they discern. Because if they don't report properly in detail or discern well, then Sunsteam can only go off of the information from the report and then make a decision on that report. And this is something I think a lot of people don't really understand, is that there should, this is a history of relationship of bridegroom and bride, which means even when it comes to the relationship between leadership and Sunsteam, it's not cut and dry like, Sunsteam, whatever you say goes, right? He just doesn't choose people randomly or all of a sudden sees a face in his prayer and says, I choose you. It doesn't work that way. Sunsteam doesn't know the situation in every church. He's a human being. Right? He doesn't know every name. He doesn't know every person in the church at a personal level. He prays and makes decisions based on the information that is given, which means the info that the leaders give is that important. Or whenever you're writing a report to Sunsteam, that information is that important. People don't know this either. So they don't understand this. So when they get a letter or decision from Sunsteam, they think that is the will of God and it's done. Right? But what I'm going to tell you is that you can do something about it if there's a reason to. So remember, that's the caveat, is there has to be a reason to it. Right? This is generally true that when the decision is made, if the reporting is done properly, everything is done, then the decision will be made in a proper way. But imagine there's a situation where it is unjust. It was unfair. It is untrue things told to Sunsteam. Then if you find out, you can respond. So let me give you an example of this. And I'm talking purely about leadership right now at this time. When I was a head leader in the third year, right? In the third year, it wasn't 3 years yet. In the third year, it was almost 3 years. I got a letter from Sunsteam, and Sunsteam straight out just told me, how can you do this? Step down. You can no longer be leader, right? It came out of the blue. Even headquarters who received the letter were kind of stumped, like, where the heck did this come from? HQ didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. All the leadership that in our church had no idea what was going on. So for me, at that point, I just thought to myself, wow, this is the will of God. So I've done something wrong. Maybe he prayed and found something out, whatever it is, and it's done. And then at that point, I started to prepare myself to leave and go somewhere else. Like I was like so embarrassed, and I was like so, I felt like I was, I felt like I was shot by a gun. Like, I just left to die. My blood was draining. I was just like, so embarrassed. I thought I failed, all these other different things. So I'm preparing my heart to go somewhere else. However, there was someone in the HQ at that time who was very experienced in these types of situations. And what this person did, very wise, started asking questions to me about what happened. I'm like, I have no idea. And they're looking around trying to figure out who made the report, where did it come from, and how did this situation all come about? And this HQ member found out later that there was someone else not in leadership who wrote a letter to Sunsteam after talking to like 2 or 3 people in a church of 100 and some odd people, right? And after this, Then after this person talked to these 2 to 3 people, this person wrote a letter explaining the situation from their side. HQ didn't know. No one knew. And then, of course, then I get the letter stating I have to stop being a head leader. So this wise headquarters person came to me and said, all right, let's do it this way. You write the repentance letter because, this is something that went wrong, and not everyone's going to be happy inside of a church, but if people are unhappy, you still have to be sorry, but you have to apologize for it, right? So all I'll do is my letter was strictly just repentance, nothing else. And then the HQ, that person, found out the real situation, talked about both sides, and sent the letter over to Sunsteam at the same time. And later on, I get a letter that came back a month later and said, oh, okay, now I know the full situation. You can stay as head leader, right? And I was like, think about this. Imagine if I just accepted it at face value and I was like, oh, okay, the will of God, oh, I'm a failure. And then I move on, right? Then I would have been left with that scar, not knowing like what I did, what was happening, all the things that were going, like I have no idea, right? But the person who is experienced understands that there's a relationship. There is a relative predestination, human responsibility that we have to make just to figure it out. Because in the end, like this HQ is very honest. Like, yeah, if there's a real reason to, then you should just step down, right? That's the right thing to do. As they're investigating, they found some improprieties. They found that some things that were just one-sided, and that's why they wrote the letter. They didn't write the letter because they are on my side, because they found something, right? And I think this is something like, and I'll be honest with you, that was like in 2018, right? So that was my 3rd year as a head leader, and that was like in April. I believe it was in April, March or April, right? And my 3 years was coming up in July, August. Okay, so maybe no, it was August. September was around that time where my 3rd year was coming up. And I was so shook by that letter from Sunsteam that I already decided to leave. And the thing that made it even harder is that when I got the letter saying you can stay as head leader, it was, I would have to tell you that I had such a hard time bringing my heart back to want to stay there. You know what I mean? Like imagine you're like told to leave, then you prepare your heart, you finally prepare yourself to leave the place, and then when my heart is ready to leave, it's like you can stay. Then I have to re-prepare my heart to stay instead. And what eventually happened was in August, when it hit my 3rd year, I basically resigned. I said, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. Right? There's just too much for me. I can't get myself back into this. And being very respectful to the situation, I was like, but I do know that if I just quit right now, you're going to have a very hard time finding leadership. So I will stay on for another 6 months so that you can find another leader, right? And I think that's a very respectful way of doing it, and more than enough time to find another leader, right? However, there wasn't a leader found, and there was like no head leader for like a year after I left, kind of thing, right? But that's a completely different other topic. But this is something like this whole situation I was thinking about specifically when it comes to leadership and appointment of leaders in the church, and how it's different than what we really think. And sometimes we forget that there are always 2 sides of the coin. We only think about one side, which is, this is what Sunsteam says, so this is how it goes. It's done. But we forget that this is a relationship, and we should discuss. If we are married to, if we're married to God, if we have a wife or a husband, you discuss together, and you talk about it together, right? And you make sure you do a decision together. It may not even be the best decision, but at least it's done together. The whole point in this history when it comes to relationship is doing it together with the Lord. Not leave it to the Lord. Lord does everything. God makes all this. No, it is done together. Even though it's 90% done by God, which is absolute predestination, there's still the 10% of our responsibility. So if you think about the real relationship of a bridegroom and a bride, it's about discussion and doing it together. Think about it. If it was just one way, if it's only God does everything, God makes all the decisions, then why would we pray and plead to God if the decision is just one way anyways? You know what I mean? What we say shouldn't sway God. And we have to realize that when we understand this more clearly, it makes much more sense about relative predestination because it's about human responsibility, right? But I think sometimes we leave it all to God sometimes, right? I think that's just what we do, and that's something that we need to change in our hearts. I know not everyone thinks this way, but I do think a lot of people do think like, oh, it was done like this. But now, after being in leadership, I always ask, oh, what was the letter out? What was the letter about, right? Like, even when it comes to this spiritual Oppenheimer, when someone says, this was a reply from Sunstein, and I would have to ask the question is, show me the letter that was sent. I want to see the letter that was sent. That's what I want to see. Because I don't know what this is saying, but if you just take a look at a letter and say, oh, take my word for it, the letter sent out was about this, then I'm not going to believe it, right? Because everything has context, right? Everything has, there's a situation and circumstance, and we need to understand it much better. Like, even one time when I was a head leader, like this is also when I was head leading, there was another time where we had this awesome leader come to New York where I was, and they just got there like 2 months ago. They shipped their car over, everything else, and then all of a sudden, a letter comes saying, oh, I want you to go to this church and lead the church. And headquarters confused, I was confused, this person's confused, no one discussed with this person either. And we found out later is someone else wrote a letter by themselves, right, behind the scenes to recommend this person, but no one else. There was zero discussion. And when Sunstein found out there was no discussion, he says, you don't have to go because you were never discussed with. There must be discussion, right? So I do think we have to kind of flip our minds a little bit and understand even more, like discussion and having clear knowledge, knowing both sides, reporting things properly is a very, very important and intricate part of our relationship with God. Yeah, most of us here may not be able to, are not going to be in a position to be sending a lot of letters or reporting a lot of different these things right now, especially, but it has to do with our prayers, right? Of course, it's like Jesus said, not my will, but your will be done. However, God will take into consideration your will also when it comes to his will, or else what would be the point of us praying for it? Jesus says his heart first, and he says, God, please take this cup away, but not my will, but your will be done, right? Which means that it has to be something that is in conjunction with God's will, right? If there is only one way to do this, there's only one way to do it. But he's pouring out his heart and saying, God, is there anything else? Is there another way to do this? But not my will, but let your will be done, right? And what we need to understand too is, there is human responsibility and the way we report things and the way that I talked about this a little bit last week when we talked to God so vaguely, like, God, what should I do with my life? It's too vague, right? But when you're very intricate and detailed in your reports to God is, I have this type of character. I'm like this, and I have this choice and I have this choice. However, I know that I am not someone who knows me. I know that you know me better than myself. And if you think that this is a much, much, much better, I'm willing to take it. But what is that? That's an actual discussion. It's a real discussion between two people. Like, hey, I don't think I'm really fit for this. However, I know that you know me better than I know myself. And if you think this is going to be something that's going to be a great learning experience, if there's going to be something that's going to actually change me for the better, I'm all for it. And that's what a discussion is. Like, think about this. You might think to yourself this, but doesn't it mean, but not my will, let your will be done? Just saying that you're leaving it back up to God? And the answer is no. Because even when it comes to decisions, like let's just say between you and other leaders, you and your husband or wife, those are the discussions, right? We discuss certain things, and there's certain things we're open to, some things we're not open to, right? So it's kind of like, hey, let's say I talk to my wife and say, hey, I think I want to get a new job. I don't want to do this anymore, which means it has to do with me. It's my personal preference. However, it affects the family too, because it has to do with the money, also providing for the family. Should we take this risk or not? And the wife will talk and say yeah, I think this is a good idea, but what do you really want to do? Do you think that you'll be able to provide for the family this, and this? And then in the end, the wife will sometimes even say, but I understand if you're really, really unhappy with this, I'll support you to do this thing here. Even if this person may not agree fully, but they love that person and they want that person to be, for that person to be happy also, right? So when we discuss, that's a normal part of it. There's always one side that has more information, or it's more a decision for one person than the other. It does affect the other, but if it has to do with someone's happiness because the job is terrible, and like that's their life too, that you're living together, and you don't want this person to be unhappy also. So when I look at this, I was like, yeah, when it comes to normal relationships, this is how we talk with each other, right? Yeah, like, oh God, but you know better than I do. So, if this doesn't fit where the will can be fulfilled, I don't want it. And I think that's one of the big things that is the tying part between our relationship with God. The tying thing is we want God's will to be fulfilled. We're both on that line. We're looking towards God's will. Just like a husband and wife are looking towards the health of the family, right? Is this going to affect the health of the family? They both have that in mind. It's for the children. It's for the child. It's for the family. So they're both thinking their own thoughts, but in the end, they're thinking what is best for the family. You know what I mean? So even when it comes to us discussing with God, we know that the number one thing is what? It's about, is this going to break God's will? Because that's the one thing none of us want. So let your will be done, not my own. Right? So, there's a lot of different things that we can start thinking about even more deeply. But, I do think some of us, sometimes we get into that mode. It's like, oh, that's what he said, so that's what it is. We're done. No, there's room for discussion. There is always room for discussion, right? There's very, very few times where it's just cut and dry. Let's go. This is what God says. And we hear it very rarely, right? Haven't you guys heard it rarely? Like where someone seems upset. It's like, no, look, this is what I said. Let's do what I said. Let's go kind of thing, right? And it's so rare to see him get upset in that time, right? But when it comes to like other things that are a little bit more loose, we have to realize that the discussion is something that's super important. And as I was saying this topic, like when it comes to picking of leaders, leadership has to understand what makes a good leader so that they can discern well of who can be the next leader. Leadership has to be the one that understand about training a leader. Leadership has to be the ones that have to look at both sides and figure out what is the best for this church or for this country or something along that line. So I was thinking about this because it came out in the Saturday message after my leaders Q&A I had with the church over here, and I thought it was very, very important. Sometimes we have to change the way that we think and feel about certain things, and we have to be those that are in a lover's relationship, bride and bridegroom relationship with God, where we're discussing, but knowing what the ultimate goal is for God's will, but we are still thinking about, yeah, this is what my preference is. If this preference gets in the way of the will, I understand. But if not, it's okay. Right? I told you guys last week the same thing is Sunseam doesn't mind people changing missions here and there. Remember, going until the end doesn't mean do your mission until the end because sometimes it doesn't fit you. After you try it for like 2 months, you're like, this doesn't fit. It's okay to change. As long as you stay within the fence of providence, you can do whatever you want inside that fence. As long as you're inside the fence protected from the wolves, right? Anything outside, the shepherd is not able to protect you. So this is something I do think that a lot of us have to think about more deeply and clearly and really think about what is the thing you really want to do. And if you really want to do something like leadership, are you receiving the skills or are you getting the skills that you need so that you can become a great leader? Okay. So yeah, that was something that I really want to talk about yesterday, but it was going to take too long. So I split it up to today too. Either way. All right. So today is going to be a great segment of practical word study. And then also at the very end, we have Provi in the media. We have 2 articles that came out. One on 1,000-person peaceful protest that happened in Seoul just last weekend. And then also we're going to go into the final conclusions of the US-based audio forensics laboratory that went over the Netflix audio. So we're going to do that in the last segment there. It's going to be really, really good today. Okay, so let's get into the first break of the day.
We believe in the same God, but we are on different levels.
Put your hands in the sky if you feel alive. All the stories that we made, just you and I. Never losing all the passion. All this love is my obsession. Oh my gosh, this feeling got me heat stroke. His love like a billion pots about to heat though. I ain't never breaking from this bond, cause you and I are only one. If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with? Who you with? If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with?
living my best life. Don't worry about a thing, you know it's only sunny life. We sing about memory stories that we share. We'll fall deeper in love as we stop and just stare. My eyes only on you, they sparkle with love. Don't forget my charm too. There will never be another. Live this life only for you. I give you this promise that I will hold true.
If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with?
Who you with? Who you with? Who you with?
If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with?
Who you with? Hey.
Together with the Lord every day, all day. Together with the Lord all day, all day. Together with the Lord every day, all day. Together with the Lord all day, all day.
We believe in the same God, but we are on different levels.
Okay, so let's get into today's practical word study. And this week's message, learn only from me. One of the big key points that came out of it was about learning from Sunsim. If you don't know something, learn from him. And that kind of inspired me to go into like older messages from like 10 years ago, 11, 12, or like, within that time. And I wanted to take a look at some stories that we may not know much about, but this is Sunsim explaining those stories, and it gives us a little bit more of details of the things that we don't know, right? So I'm going to go over like 3 small stories, and I hope it kind of inspires you to look back at your notes or look back into messages and see the stories of other rocks and trees. Right? So the first story I'm going to talk about today is the grass thatched roof rock. And I think you guys seen it in the Ambition Masterpiece. On the bottom of it, there is like a rock that looks like a house, right? It looks like the grass thatched roof house that Sunsim used to have, right? So here, let me get into this story. This was talked about during one of the pre-dawns. And he said, when I discovered the rock masterpiece, the house with grass thatched roof, since I was looking at it only with my physical eyes at a state my eyes of the heart had not opened, I was going to break the rock as I wanted and use it for a worthless purpose. For that, I had an excavator hit the rock repeatedly. At that time, the Lord made the excavator go out of order. We couldn't break the rock. We stopped the work and just transported it to Wonmyeongdong. Later on, when I saw it again, as the Lord opened my eyes of the heart, the rock had the shape of the grass-thatched roof house that I used to live in. The rock was a treasure, a great masterpiece that weighed even 7 tons, and that was worth hundreds of millions of won, which means it's worth like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Everyone can see things properly only when the eyes of their heart are opened, right? So it's very, very interesting because I like this short story, but it shows you that there's a lot of stories here where God is stopping Sunsim from doing something with his own thoughts instead. And the reason why I like these stories that Sunsim gives is because there's always a realization in the end. There's always something in there where you're like, oh, I never thought about that. And we know that rocks also symbolize people. And the way that Sunsim put it is that in the same way too, think about it carefully. There's a lot of times where the eyes of your heart are not open. You're not seeing through God's eyes. And the way you look at people, you think that they need to be broken. They're worthless, but they're worth hundreds and millions of dollars. But because of the eyes of your heart are not open, you can't see it. And it was later on, like, it's pretty amazing that the excavator broke. And he's like, all right, let's just ship the whole thing there. And later it's like, oh, that's what it is. And I think it's the same with people too. Sometimes people are only seen for their, like, we look at them and judge them by their raw appearance or skill sets. But it's only later when all this skill and stuff is put together and practiced, this is when you get to see, that's what they're worth. This is someone that is valuable. Right? So that is it's a tongue twister. It is the house with grass thatched roof. I dare you to say that 10 times. The house with grass thatched roof. The house with grass whatever. Okay, so there's that rock. Another one is a pine tree that's on a rock. Right, there's a pine tree on a rock. So Sunstein said this is also in the pre-dawn. This is from like 2012 or 13, I think. It says, when I had not opened my eyes when the eyes of my heart had not opened to trees yet, I was going to cut down a bonsai pine tree that was worth more than $100,000. It was because the tree was growing on a rock. At that time, I had opened my eyes to rocks only, but not to trees. So when I wanted to saw it down, I found that there was no saw. So when I tried to cut it with a sickle, I was kind of afraid that the sickle will break while cutting the tree, since the sickle was for cutting grass. So I didn't cut down the tree that day. Because I was acting ignorantly, since I was blind to trees, the Holy Sun Lord was twisting the situation so that I wouldn't be able to cut it. Later on, I realized its value because the Holy Sun Lord made the eyes of my heart open suddenly while I was being discouraged because pine trees died every time we planted them, since the eyes of my heart to planting pine trees were not open yet. Suddenly, I remember the pine tree growing on a rock that I saw, and I thought to myself, if I don't cut down the pine tree on a rock and bring the entire rock along with the tree will live 100%. And on that same day, I had the rock lifted and carried to Warmingdong with an excavator, and I placed the pine tree with the rock as a bonsai tree for the lawn of the natural temple. This pine tree is a flat pine tree. It is a tree that is rare and precious. Its value is like that of a diamond. It is a tree that the Holy Sun Lord had raised for over 200 years. All of you are like the bonsai pine tree that grew on a rock. See yourself valuably. The one who has opened the eyes of their heart is speaking to you. So value yourself and do not give your body to anyone, right? So this is the bonsai pine tree on a rock. And you see even here is, in the very end of it, what is God doing? There is a story behind it. And because of that story, it becomes a meaningful rock. It's not just a 200-year-old rock that God has prepared, but there is a message behind it that's the same way that we have to see ourselves and value ourselves too, right? So, when you look at these stories, they're quite amazing, and it's really like, I found like 10 stories, but some of them were so long and like it was amazingly detailed. There's this one where something's describing a tree. It's like, and there's 4 branches that come out from the root, and one is north, east, west, south, and he talks about like the meters. It's 2 meters here, 4 meters here. It's so accurate, and it's true because Sunseem is the one that's doing it. Because Sunseem is the one that's doing it. It means that he understands he has the most interest, he's measured, he's done everything, right? So I think that we have to realize, sometimes we forget these stories because we only hear it once, which means Sunseem is in his right. Like, I think it's smart for Sunseem to keep repeating stories until we remember it. Forever and ever and ever. Like, I remember one time during the time of the rapture, we learned the rapture for like a year. Every week, rapture, 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 rapture. It was all rapture every week. However, it allowed it to sear into our hearts and minds because it was that important. Like, when I'm reading these stories, I think most of us are not remembering any of these stories, but they were in the messages. But it's good for us to review them. Maybe even make a book of these things too. The last story is there's a masterpiece pine tree next to the big face rock. So here's a story here. One time when I was looking at a photo of the topography of Warmingdong, I saw a pine tree that looks smaller than a pen. That pine tree said to me, like this pine tree through the picture spoke to Sunseem saying, I will die soon. The owner of this grave said that my roots have stretched into the grave and that he would cut me with a saw. He came to see me a few days ago. So I immediately contacted the manager and instructed him to write a sign on that tree saying protected tree, and to tell the owner of that grave, do not cut this tree down. And then I told him to dig it out and bring it, since it was our pine tree. So a few days later, the owner of the grave came again. So we told him that we would dig it out and we would bring this pine tree, right? And That was a pine tree that was raised by both God and the Holy Son. We dug it out and planted it at the end of the sports field next to the big face rock. Now it has become one of the natural monument artworks of Wollongong. In this way, if you receive inspiration from the Holy Spirit, listen to the words that the Holy Son says and hear the sound of creation. You will save creation, gain things through that, and live joyfully giving glory to God, the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Son. I'm telling you the story of this pine tree so that you will learn to converse with creation. So in this story, he kind of gives two hints. Number one, he talks about conversing with creation, right? So when it's conversing with creation, what does that mean? Conversing with creation means that, wait, you're talking to a tree, but eventually at the end of it, Sansim gives you the hint and says, if you receive inspiration from the Holy Spirit. So it's not literally the tree that's speaking to you, but the Holy Spirit is speaking to you through that tree, right? And this is how we're able to hear the sounds of creation, because we are aware of creation around us. We are seeing it and we're understanding it, right? And we're going to gain through it too. So like this is why it's so powerful, right? It is so powerful that we can learn from these stories. Like remember, it's not just the story itself that makes it valuable, but it's the message that we get through. And I think this is something I talked about 2 weeks ago is, whenever you have an amazing story in your life, God is speaking to you through it, and sometimes we just don't hear it. And last week, Sunsim said in the message, you have to look back at those stories and realize from it. And sometimes God will make you even realize more deeply, right? And don't just look at the story and say, oh, this is what it means, but you need to realize through it, right? And I hope that is something that we all can do, looking at these stories that Sunsim gives. Like I've only gone over 3 stories of 3 small stories, right? And, I went through one with the remember is it the Holy Sun rock that has like 6 or 7 different images on it? The fighter jet, God's face, the Holy Sun's face, the eagle rock face, the Holy Spirit. Like there's so many images in that one rock. I was looking at that one. That one is like 3 pages of explanations of every single image there is, right? And I hope that you guys, that all of us, the practical word studies, go over these stories. And don't just go over the story itself, but look at the realization Sunsim has and the lesson that God wants to teach us through that rock. It's an amazing rock, but what's even more amazing is the stories, the lessons that we learn through it about each other. All right. So that's the practical word study for today. I really implore all of you to go to past messages, look at those stories, look at, the realizations from it, and you're going to realize even more like, wow, these stories are really amazing. Sometimes we're just not in the right mindset to listen to it, but a lot of times you listen to these, you read these stories again, and it's really amazing. All right. So there it is, guys. That is today's practical word study. I hope it's something that really moved and inspired you guys too. All right. So let's get into the second break of the day.
I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. We stay looking for someone to hold when the right one's standing at your door. Open up your heart and say, I believe in what you say, and I promise you will gain much more. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. 10 years of struggle, 10 years of pain, but I'll finally get to see you no more. Just calling your name, and the ones who wonder who, just open up your eyes. He's waiting for you too. He's not a man in disguise. And the hardest cross to bear, but your heart's not what I wear. To think this effort and this love could overcome the dirty stairs, and it's all because of you. Yeah, it's all because of you. Said it's all because of you. Yeah, I need you. Looking for someone to hold when the right one's standing at your door. Open up your heart and say, I believe in what you say, and I promise you will gain much more. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. Yes, you right now. Yes, you right now that I need. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. Yes, you right now. Yes, you right now that I need.
Okay, so let's get into the final segment of today's Tuesday podcast, and we're going to go into Provi in the media. And, it was kind of at a lull where we didn't get a lot of articles or things happening because of the trial is put on hold because of the judicial recusal request, meaning they wanted another judge because this judge seemed to be biased already. But there are a couple of things that we did get in the news, which I think is quite amazing and awesome. And there's two articles. One has to do with 1,000 members came together to do a peaceful protest or a demonstration against the unfair trial. And the great thing about this is I'm not going to be reading from a Providence article. I'm going to read from the actual article that newspapers are covering, which is great because it means that there is exposure actually happening. I'm just going to read you what they said, and it was very unbiased. It wasn't biased at all. It was just talking about what the demonstration was about, which is great. 1,000 people in Seoul, and that's gonna open the eyes to the public also, and also to the courts, because the courts are swayed by public opinion, even though it shouldn't be, right? But the first one I'm going to talk about is the forensics. The forensics report done by an outside third party, which is Musin. So Taiwan actually put the audio into an audio forensics, a voice forensics laboratory, which in Taiwan, it's actually not a Taiwanese business. It is a US-based firm. Extensive knowledge and technology in audio forensics, and they're used by courts to prove or disprove or about audios that come in, like when they're using it as evidence, like what's happening right now. And there are a couple the actual results have come out, and it's very, very interesting. So here is like one of the foremost, one of the best for audio forensic companies, and this is the conclusions that they come up with. So number one is the things that we need to know. What is the situation of this audio? Like, how did this come about? So the recording was claimed to be done by a mobile phone, particularly an iPhone 11. However, the plaintiff claimed that the phone was sold and the original file was on that phone, but also said that the backup file was on the cloud server. You have the iCloud, right? Because it's an iPhone. In the beginning, or even now, prosecutors did not accept the file. So prosecutors are against Sunstein, but they did not accept the file as evidence because it is a backup and not the original, and may be altered or edited because it's not the original, right? However, even though prosecutors did not accept the file, the plaintiff, which is Maple, released the audio evidence on Netflix, right? So that's what we heard on the Netflix documentary. And there are concerns that her intentions were to sway the public opinion and the court's decision, right? Because it did play a huge role in public opinion. Now, interestingly, this is a thing that's kind of interesting, is that same audio clip of the audio file released by Netflix, it was released by different medias, like other media companies like JTBC and Netflix and other companies have released that same audio. However, the thing that's weird is the audio have different speaking orders. Like, it's not in the same order. So different, and there's also different responding voices, and even third-party voices at the scene that are not heard in one audio but heard in the other. So that is kind of like the situation that they're dealing with. And the two questions that come about is this. Number one is is the recording device stated by the audio file true? So is it really coming from an iPhone 11? Is that really true, right? Is it a true file, right? And the second question that they're dealing with is it reasonable to say that the audio file was not altered or edited before it was submitted to the media? So these are the final results that actually came about. So the first thing that's kind of interesting is this disputed audio file has like dialogue data. And the interesting thing about it, it contains many visible scratch marks. Like the audio has scratch marks. So I'm not sure how to explain it in very simply, but you could just say there's patterns seen that are not normal in an audio, right? So many of these scratch marks have relations to file format conversion operations, right? So you're changing the format of you're converting the file into something else. Okay, so it's like, yeah, many of these scratch marks have relations to file format conversion operations, but they said recommendation. Recommendation is get the original audio file that was given to Netflix and get them authenticated again, right? And this is not something that just Musin, that's the company that's coming out with these results right now, but they said just like the Korean forensics justice system, so the Koreans went through it too, and they said the exact same thing. Request that Maple give the original file in order to prove her assertion. On top of that, what this company said is, if you look in criminal psychology suggests that if this audio file were actually true, then Maple would have tried her best, her utmost to keep the original file because it's true. But then the question is, like, why would you sell your phone that has the original file? Do you know what I mean? So it's like in criminal psychology, yeah, if it's actually true, you would do everything to keep this. You wouldn't sell your phone. But then it's like, why would you just sell your phone? It's like there's something wrong with that psychologically, right? And another thing that they're looking at this, like the sounds of this Netflix audio, they were saying a lot of the audio was inconsistent. Now, the second question that we're trying to figure out is the recording device itself, right? So in the Netflix documentary, there is a conversation where Maple is talking to, I guess, someone who's talking to her on that documentary. And what it says at the 40-minute to 41-minute mark is, how was it recorded? And she said it was recorded on her iPhone 11 device using the Voice Memos app, okay? However, this audio forensic says the audio is not consistent with an audio recording of an iPhone 11. So what's the example? The example is the audio is recorded in 16 kilohertz. However, the iPhone 11 records in 32 kilohertz, and that's why it's more than likely not the same recording device. Or it could be like a third-party recording app, but not to what she said. She's an iPhone 11 using voice memos, and if that's the case, this audio file is inconsistent with her testimony. So in the end, what this audio forensic said is they concluded that the Netflix audio, as it appears in the documentary, was converted in an improper or unprofessional way, and you need to get the original file in order for you to even accept this at all. So there are so many inconsistencies with it that the only way to 100% prove this, because now there is too much reasonable doubt that this is an improper file, that you cannot accept this, that you have to get the original file and authenticate that one instead. Right? So that is the actual results that came from Musin. It's a Taiwanese company. However, it's based in the US and used all around the world, right? So there's that is it. So that's something that we have to look at and say, yeah, there's something wrong with this. Okay. The second thing for Provi and the media we'll go into is a large-scale rally. 1,000 members came together, right? And they are basically doing a demonstration, a peaceful protest against the trial. And basically the news article says, the CGM, large-scale rally of Christian Gospel Mission, and then it says appeal for a fair trial, not a trial by public opinion. So on the 30th of July, the CGM church members, the church member council held a rally in front of Seoul City Hall and urged a fair trial for Sunsenim. The church members gathered at the scene saying, I know the evidence. The recorded files are fabricated evidence. Unjust prejudice. Change the trial. The recorded file, these are all the things that they were shouting out together. The recorded files are manipulated. We must judge fairly. And they concluded the meeting by praying they concluded this rally by praying that the trial of Sunstein would be conducted fairly and according to the judicial principle of evidence. So the organizers of the event said, we prepared the event to inform the world of our truth at a time when the trial of Sunstein is turning into a public opinion trial. We will continue to hold peace rallies to spread the word. So that it's a very, very short article, but it's great. Because there is nothing negative about it. It's not saying, oh, these crazy people, oh, their teacher is this, and this, and a sex offender, yada, yada. No, nothing like that. It is very, very unbiased. It is neutral. And I thought that was a great sign that you kind of get to see a turn in the... You got to get to see a turn in the media, kind of like, oh, what is going on here? And that's 1,000 people, which is a lot of people to reckon with. And I do think that if we continue to do this and pray for this to happen, we're going to see more and more changes too. So, this is something that, I'm not going to say that, oh, we're going to win the trial, this is going to happen. No, I'm not saying this at all. But I'm saying is we're seeing results. We're seeing results through our prayer condition. Keep the prayer condition going. We're on week 2. Remember, this is going to be 10 weeks. 10 weeks for a 70-day prayer condition. I hope that all of us will really have our hearts really focused to make sure that everything is done according to God's will, and that we are not going to be the one that hinders God's will, but we will be the ones that will help God's will to happen. All right? So there it is, guys. That is Provi in the media. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. If you have any questions, go and leave below. If you have any other questions or things like that, you can leave it in the comments. If you have other things that you saw from the trial, or people from it, from the protest, I would love to hear other testimonies too. Okay, so there it is. This is the Tuesday podcast. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. So let's get, that's it. So everyone have an amazing and awesome Tuesday, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, I'm on the Morning Star Drive, I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this.